This is a war on religion. This is a war on the children. They give you the cure with the sickness. This is a war on tradition. This is a war on religion. This is a war on the children. They give you the cure with the sickness. This is a war. This is a war.
This is a war that we living through, never reveal to you that they also leaving killing you. They don't tell you what the hell you agreeing to. She been hurting you, don't know who leading you. Keep on proceeding to follow, your mind is so hollow. Are you being coddled by government swallowing up everything that the media tell you without a question or a problem? All of these sheep being slaughtered, they poison the water, removing the father. Ain't trusting these daughters, ignoring blue collar, keep printing the dollar. Brainwashing your sons and your daughters, ain't got any honor. If I'm being honest, I just ain't picking this side. But I'm gonna ride for my freedom and die for my freedom and question the government lies. A lot on my mind, it's so little time. Gotta think all of us needing a sign. The devil he hides, an ego and pride. They selling, they paying the price. God won't give you more than you can handle. Government should be dismantled. Every politician got a scandal. Prepare for the war, we going to battle.
This is a war on religion. This is a war on the children.
Hey, welcome back to Voice of Mecklenburg County. In episode 2, you might remember that we mentioned we would be covering the Mecklenburg County Health Department in today's episode. However, given the overwhelming response to our November 11th video of the most recent Charlotte-Mecklenburg School Board meeting, and our November 23rd video of the Hopewell High School meeting, we've pivoted to the topic of our public, that is to say government, school system in Mecklenburg County. As you might recall, the November CMS board meeting began with the board wasting 2 hours of the attendees' time in what is clearly an attempt to demoralize them into leaving.
I want to challenge every one of you to go back and watch the first 2 hours of this. In my lifetime, I've been to thousands of business meetings. I have never heard so many words spoken and nothing said. And nothing said. And you wear us out with this.
The parents and grandparents of Mecklenburg County hung tough and delivered their fair and passionate assessment of a clearly failing leadership team. After watching and rewatching this video, we here at VOMC asked, what more can we do to help these parents? Well, serendipitously, earlier this month, I happened to meet Dr. John Stone of the Education Consumers Foundation. Dr. Stone earned his PhD in education from the University of Florida and has served as an educator at East Tennessee State University for nearly 50 years. Currently, Dr. Stone is a professor in ETSU's Department of Teaching and Learning in ETSU's Clemmer College of Education. Dr. Stone has served as the president of the Education Consumers Foundation since 2004. Now, ECF, in the words of Dr. Stone, is like Consumer Reports, but focused exclusively on education policy, practice, and outcomes. So ECF believes that parents, and quite frankly all citizens, are the consumers of the educations provided by their respective government school systems. ECF also believes that parents and citizens as consumers should be prepared to challenge their children's school systems with the data that is publicly available. ECF also believes that early reading mastery is the single most important contribution that a school can make to a child's education and the single most important indicator of whether a school will give your child a good start. In Dr. Stone's words, third grade reading mastery is the single most important metric for any school because up until third grade, we learn to read. Beyond third grade, we read to learn. So, all that being said, how is CMS's board doing in preparing our children and grandchildren to learn to read? As you can see, from this chart, developed from the most recent, which is 2019, publicly available data on the North Carolina Department of Education's website and collated on the ECF's website, not very well. First of all, let me orient you to how user-friendly this website is. If you go to the ECF homepage and you click on Key Data and Tools, you'll see a drop-down menu. The drop-down menu will then show you reading all U.S. elementary schools grade 3. Click on that, give it time to come up, scroll down to get to North Carolina, click on North Carolina. The North Carolina page will pop up, On that page, you go ahead and click on Poverty versus Third Grade Reading Proficiency Rates 2019. The blank chart will pop up, and at this point, you can decide what data you want to display. So for purposes of our discussion today, let's go ahead and click Select School, click C, and then scroll down until we get to Charlotte-Mecklenburg. Click on Charlotte-Mecklenburg, and then a data plot will come up that shows you every elementary school in Charlotte-Mecklenburg and how they're doing at preparing our children and our grandchildren to read to learn. That is to say, how they're preparing our students, our children, our grandchildren to read at a third grade level. Now let me orient you to this chart. The x-axis shows the proficient of advanced readers in third grade. So what that means is the percentage of students in third grade in each of these schools who is able to read at the third grade level. The y-axis will show you the percentage of students receiving free school lunches. Now, please go to the chart yourself. It's very user-friendly. If you hover over a dot, it'll show you the exact school that it represents. It'll show you the number of children who are receiving free school lunches, and it'll also show you the percentage of students that are proficient or advanced in reading at a third grade level. You can also, if you'd like, you can go down to the search function, you can click on a school, and then a flag will pop up to show you exactly where that school ranks in Charlotte-Mecklenburg. Now, as we look at this chart, we see what I think we've all been conditioned to expect, and that is to say that the proficiency of each school directly correlates with the relative poverty or wealth of that school. So we would expect to see a trend going from high proficiency on the left, which is to say high proficiency in the higher economic schools, and down to a lower proficiency at those schools where there's a higher percentage of students receiving free school lunches. What I think is troubling, however, is if we look at the best school, the best elementary school in all of Charlotte-Mecklenburg, it is only preparing 83.3% of its students to read to learn. That means that at our best school, nearly 1 out of every 5 third graders is not prepared to go on to read to learn. Now it gets worse. We have one school in our district that is actually preparing only 5% of its students to read to learn beyond third grade. So think about that number. 95 out of every 100 students at that school are unprepared for further education. It gets even worse. If you do a quick count of the schools that are below the 50% mark, we've got nearly 60% of our schools that aren't even preparing half of their students to be able to read at the third grade level. What's more disturbing are the following. In August of this year, the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction reported that as of 2019, which is the most recent data available, and we'll get into the reasons for that in a little bit, 42 of the 166 schools in CMS were low performing. So that's about 25%, just a little over 25% of the schools in Charlotte-Mecklenburg are poor performing. What's really troubling about that data is, according to the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction and the North Carolina Department of Education, we don't call a district low performing until they get to the point where 50% of their schools are low performing. Let that sink in. What's even more troubling about this statistic is that we don't have more recent data because, in the words of the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, for the 2020 to 2021 school year, the United States Department of Education and the North Carolina General Assembly granted the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction a waiver from reporting school performance grades. Now, the academic failures are troubling enough, but in addition to failing our children and grandchildren academically, CMS continues to fail them on the safety front. As you've probably seen in the news recently, a series of fights have erupted in many schools over the current academic year, and In this academic year alone, 17 guns have been found in CMS schools. Now, when the board was confronted specifically about violence at Hopewell High School, the CMS superintendent, according to WSOC TV, did not commit to any timelines for safety changes. Just take a moment to think about that. Did not commit to any timelines for safety changes. Folks, we all know announcing plans with no firm timeline is, in the words of one parent who spoke at Hopewell High School, just putting on a show for the cameras. And let's, for the sake of argument, assume that all of the plans announced were in fact implemented. That is to say, the clear backpacks, the metal detectors, greater police presence, and believe it or not, even artificial intelligence tracking of our students in schools. All those measures really unfairly burden the good law-abiding students and their parents by diverting the educational funds to police activities. And in reality, they do nothing to stop the criminal students. Until the CMS board and administration takes an aggressive action against all violence and all perpetrators of violence by removing them from the school system, this is going to continue. Now listen, we here at VOMC, we don't pretend to be educational experts, but the data is clearly troubling to any observer and points out the systemic issues within the CMS board. Just like we don't pretend to be education experts, we're also not TV experts. But if the best we could hope for was that our TVs work 75 or even 83% of the time that we tried to turn them on, we'd be returning them to the store. And when we got to the store with our 83% TV, the store would replace them without asking us how it became defective, because we're the consumers. They are the supposed subject matter experts. Troubleshooting, identifying, and most importantly, fixing defects is their responsibility, not ours. And given the importance of competition in the TV market, you could rest assured that the store would be far more responsive to us than the CMS board is to parents and grandparents. Now, compare and contrast how we might expect that a store would respond to our consumer complaints with how CMS's board responds to the complaints of their consumers. On November 9th and 23rd, when confronted by their consumers regarding obvious defects in their product, members of the CMS board became dismissive and patronizing. On November 9th, one board member dismissively waved her hand at a consumer and told her, "It's not your turn to speak."
There are exceptions, medical, behavioral. Excuse me, it's not your turn to speak. I just want to.
After wasting 90 minutes of their consumers' time, another board member insulted a parent with a snarky "thank you very much" after that parent had the audacity to complain about the board's delaying tactics. Apparently, the following two board members were both oblivious to the irony when they said, "We need to do our business. Please do not interrupt our business. The public needs to hear us say our business." While another told parents and grandparents to put your trust into your district. At the November 23rd board meeting, a board member actually insulted parents who dared to challenge the board by chastising those parents' negativity. That same board member then specifically insulted another parent who dared respond to the first insult and, outside of her 1-minute time limit, by saying, "And this is part of the reason that we have kids that don't follow rules."
Wow.
Okay, that's hard to follow.
And this is part of the reason that we have kids that don't follow rules.
By the most recent publicly available metrics, CMS's board is failing. And rather than show contrition or take responsibility, on November 9th and 23rd, many board members, and we have to point out it was not all board members, but it was many board members, instead attempted to demoralize, patronize, and chastise their consumers for merely pointing out those failures. We, at the Voice of Mecklenburg County, applaud the students, parents, and grandparents who showed the courage and took the time and energy to attend and speak at both of these meetings. We strongly encourage all concerned consumers of the CMS board to attend the December 14th board meeting, equipped with the data from the Education Consumer Foundation to add to the litany of concerns expressed on November 9th and 23rd. If you'd like to speak up at the next board meeting, sign up at the URL provided on the screen by noon of the day of the meeting. Committee meetings will be held in the chamber room of the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Government Center, unless otherwise noted. All right, folks, in closing, we've pointed out a lot of failures, and I think it's really important to point out two things. Number one, not all of the board members were so resistant to and demeaning to the parents who were presenting concerns. So in fairness to them, there are board members who care. Secondly, we've pointed out a lot of metrics that indicate that there's failures. One important thing to remember is when a mission fails, it's very rarely the fault of the soldiers in the field. It's the fault of the senior leadership that put those soldiers in a position to fail. So, thank you all for tuning in to the return of the Voice of Mecklenburg County. If you enjoyed the episode and you are aligned with our mission, please subscribe to the show and tune in every week. Please share this show with like-minded folks. Please like the show and leave comments or feedback. As of now, you can follow the show on Telegram, Getter, Rumble, and YouTube. We look forward to speaking with you again, and we wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving.
What makes you think you can make me stop? You know that there is no conquering me. What makes you think you can make me stop? You know that there is no stopping me. What makes you think you can make me stop? You know that I will not break no pins. What makes you think you can make